Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. Today we are going to be making a double mitered bridal joint, and so it's just like a bridal joint except for it's decorative, so there's mitered edges. It makes it look really pretty. And this is a live video, so if you've never seen one of my live videos, we do those live usually Tuesday at 7 p.m. This one's a little bit weird because my wife and I were out, and so we just now got back. And often my wife is here, and she is tonight, which is a fun time. So if you want to ask my wife questions behind my back, you can do so in the live chat. It always tends to be a good bit of fun. Ooh, we have someone in here. Let's see, Alex C first. Yes, Alex C, you are my favorite person for the moment being until the next person hops on, and then they're my favorite person. So let's actually take a look at what we're going to be making tonight. And we're going to be actually making this joinery window, and we've been working on this over the last several live videos. This is a really simple thing that is put together so you have all these pieces to come together. 6 boards that make 9 different joints, and each of these joints are a great way to practice then. So it's everything from the simple half lap to a dovetail to a mitered joint, and eventually we're going to do a splined mitered joint. I was going to be doing the pocket hole, but I think I'm going to save that for last because that's the one that a lot of people are like, ooh, hand tools, pocket hole, and so I think I'm going to make that one last. But it's 9 different joints, and if you want to make this yourself, I do have the drawings for this available on my website, woodbywright.com/shop, and you can download these for free and follow along at your own leisure. And it's a great project for learning the joints and putting things together. So tonight we are going to be making the double mitered half lap. I assume double mitered bridal joint. For some reason my brain is thinking half lap, and I think I put that in the title, half lap. I'll have to change that later. But a double mitered bridal joint. And what is that? Well, basically it is a bridal joint with double miters on it. Surprise, surprise. So I'm going to take this piece apart so we can actually get into the project. Wow, that joint's tighter than I thought. Take these apart, pull this out, because last time we did the through tenon draw bore, but this time double mitered bridal joint. So make sure I'm getting these in the right order, otherwise we get them very confused and mixed up. So, because there's nothing worse than doing all the joinery needed and then suddenly realizing, oops, I did something wrong. 7722. What did I mix up here? I mixed up something. I mixed up that. Did I mix that up? No, I didn't. Oh no! I had them all right just beforehand, and then I go and mix them all up on here. I'm sorry about that. Let me figure this out, and we'll get back to this in just a moment. Nope, it is that one. 2, 3. And that's why I have all these labels on here, so I can figure it out. Otherwise, things get really confusing really fast. And then you're in there, 1 and 1. Okay, so that was wrong. So let's flip these around. Uh-oh, did I mix this up again? Welcome to live. That's where the fun happens in the shop. There we go. So 4, 4, 9, 9, 1, 1, and right now we're working on 4. So I need to keep these 2 together. And we can get rid of all the rest of these boards because we're just making this one corner joint right here. So welcome to Wood by Wright Live. And I'm going to label this out so that I know which side is what. And I'm going to grab a pin here. I'm going to be taking off material on this corner and this corner here. And basically what we're going to do is make a miter joint. So cut these at 45 so it miters together. But then on top of that, we're also going to be making a bridal joint. And you grab the pieces that are the bridal joint, which are over here. And a bridal joint is this, where these 2 slide together like that. And it's basically a mortise and tenon, but it's open on 2 of the sides. But rather than it looking like a butt joint here, it's going to look like a miter joint, so the cut will be going across it. So let's dive into this. Now, with a miter joint, it's really easy because I can take the saw and I can cut a miter and I can cut a miter, I put it together and we're done. But with the double mitered bridal joint, one of these I can cut at a miter and then I can remove the bridal joint. But the other one, I can't cut it at a miter because I have to create a tenon in here. So what we're going to start by doing is figuring out how to actually cut that miter perfectly. Now, I can actually go through with a square. Let me grab that. And I can put this on here, and I could draw out from the corner precisely where 45 is. So let me try that on this one. And I can put that on here. Oop, it slid. Oh no, it slid. And I could draw my line precisely where 45 is. But in this case, if this board is a slightly different thickness than this board, when these two come together, they're not going to work out quite right. The other thing I can do is I can put these on here and I can line up the edges, and I know that this is a perfect 90 degrees and on here because I milled it up like that. And then where these join, I'm going to put a mark here. Let me flip it around so you guys can see it. Put this on here, clean everything up, make it feel really good to the fingers. Once it's really where you want it, put some pressure on there. Oop, it slid a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to put a little nick mark here. And then I'm going to put a little nick mark once it stops sliding. Put a little nick mark here. And what I have here then are two nick marks that I can draw a line from one side to the other. Now because I know that these are the same thickness and that this is 90 degrees, when I put this on here, lo and behold, that nick mark lines up absolutely perfectly with that 45 that I just drew across on that line. And so that one's okay. And then on this one, let me see, where did I put that nick mark on here? Because it's just a tiny little nick mark right there. On this one, I'm going to do it without that 45 on there. And so I'm going to put my knife into that nick mark. And I'm going to slide my square up against it. Right there. And in this case, I'm way... Oh, no, I'm just messing up here. If I follow my square, let me actually set it up with the square and show you where it's at. I didn't have it tight against there. So the square would put the nick mark right here, which in the case it actually is. So I'm going to start the other way and just show you what I'm talking about. I can put in the nick mark here, I can put it on this, and I don't care where it is, I'm just going to move this over until it lines up with the corner. Just keeping it against that. Line that up and draw my line. So even if you don't have a 45-degree square, or your boards are different angles or they're different thicknesses, you can use this trick and draw a line from the corner to where these two boards intersect, and you'll have your 45-degree line on there. So now I have my marks on here where I can cut across. Next thing I want to do is on one of these boards, I actually want to just cut that 45 off. So I'm going to grab my smaller square, and I'll put it on here, and where that nick mark is, I'm going to put my knife in there and draw a line across. Now this is a line that I can then follow with my saw. So I can cut all the way down there, keep the saw vertical and square to this. And let me switch back over to this and show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to grab my bench hook, set it on here, pull out a crosscut saw. Now, this is something that confuses a lot of people because I'm going at 45. I'm partially crossing and partially ripping, so which one do I grab? It doesn't matter. Grab whatever you want. I usually like a crosscut saw a little bit more. I feel a little more comfortable with it. But everyone is a little bit different, so do what is comfortable to you. Switch back over to that. And I hope you all like this loss of service right in between when I switch back and forth. I'm trying to figure out how to get that. I got the better equipment, and apparently one of them has that signal in there, and so I've got to get rid of that. So I'm just going to start nicking on the far side here, and then slowly follow the line back across. Until I have a kerf that I'm comfortable with. And then I'm going to cut vertically. And if anything, I'm staying away from the line a little bit. Because I can always clean it up with a shooting board, which I'll show you in just a second here. So there, I've got my 45-degree line on there, and I've stayed away from it. I've actually skewed a bit, and if you can look up really close, see if I can zoom in and show you guys this. I can see on here, rather than going perfectly vertical like this, I leaned the saw over and it kind of cut it at an angle that way. So you can see some of the angle here. That's perfectly fine because I'm going to clean it up on a shooting board, which I can do on this piece. On the other piece, I can't do that. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. make a lot of noise. Set up my shooting board. Now,
time out.
What's that?
Before you go any further, are you able to tighten your zoom? It's just a tad fuzzy on our end on this camera that you're on right now.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, let me set my hand.
Just ever so slightly.
Change the focus a little bit.
Whoa.
See if that helps.
That looks better.
I may have bumped the focus on it. Sorry about that. Thank you. Okay. Now to shoot at 45, you can go out and make yourself a mitered shooting board, something that has a 45-degree angle on there. But I find just using a speed square makes the world a lot easier. So I set the speed square on there, set this on there, line this all up. Let me switch over to the other camera and show you a little bit what I'm talking about. And then I'm going to grab my low angle jack, put that on there, and then I can clean this all up specifically to that angle, but I'm going to adjust this ever so slightly. The angle is currently off. There we go. And now I can shoot it just like a shooting board once I get the angle in there. Why aren't you cutting? My blade's not out. Why are you so tight? There you go. It'd help if I check that beforehand, but oops. Because I just adjusted this for a video recently and forgot to flip it back. Sorry about that. There we go. So now we can shoot. And the nice thing about using the speed square trick is I know that this is precisely 45 degrees. And so as long as my boards are true and the same width, I know that that is exactly what I want. So now that that is 45 degrees, I need to do the same thing to this other board. But in this other board, I need to have a tenon on here to then fit into a mortise I will be creating on this board. So I can't use a saw and a shooting board because I'm going to have a tenon sticking out here. Let me show you what we're going to do for that. If you think about it, rather than creating a mitered joint on the second piece, and just about creating a tenon on here, everything becomes a little bit simpler. So what's the first thing we do when we make a tenon? We grab a mortising gauge. And I can set this up to the thickness of my mortising chisel, but in this case I'm really not going to be using a mortising chisel on this because it's open just like a bridal joint. So I can make it pretty much whatever width I want, other than the fact that I need to make it, let me grab the right one. I need to make it so that my chisel can fit in there. So I can make it wider than my chisel, I just can't make it narrower than my chisel. So if your smallest chisel is a 1/4 inch, don't make a mortise that is smaller than a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to set up these pins to something around there. I can just kind of eyeball that. And then I can center these out. And I'm just going to put them together like that. In this case, I really don't care that they're dead centered. It really doesn't matter at all, as long as I am referencing from the same side of the board, the side that I have the tape on. If that tenon is out of center one way or the other, it may look odd, but it doesn't matter functionally as long as it's where it needs to be. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to mark from there. Nope, I forgot to put this mark on here because I need to know where to stop the cuts. So I'm going to put that into that nick mark that I made first. Just draw across there. And then, rather than putting it on this side, I'm going to flip it over so that my fence is on the side with the tape. Making sure to knock the boards around and dent them all up, because everybody likes a good dent in their woodwork. It's a sign of true craftsmanship. And now that I have that marked out, and I have this all set up, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on here, marking out where the tenon will be, because the tenon and the mortise should be the exact same side, keeping the fence on the side with the tape, so that as everything is nice and clean. Why don't I have, oh, duh, I didn't draw a line across there. So I need to have a line on the back here of where to stop the cut. So I'm going to put this right on that corner, slide the square up against it, put a nick on here, roll this over, put my knife in that nick again. Bring this.
Poor Nick.
Yes. Nick is always getting the knives. And now I have a stop cut there. I know how deep to cut that mortise. Flip this around. And I feel myself going very fast right now because I have a live video here and I'm trying to keep up. And so I'm going to take a breath and relax. And this is something I find myself, even when I'm not on a video, is I get into the woodworking and I get excited about it and I start banging things around and my tools fall on the floor and my joints go crazy. And I find I need to just stop and calm down and slow down and everything becomes a lot clearer and better. So after taking a breath, now we can jump back into the project. So have some fun with the woodworking, but don't let it get carried away. So we need to make a tenon here and a mortise here. Now for the tenon, I'm going to cut the cheeks first. So to do that, we're going to back this up a little ways so you guys can see this. Focus that on there. And the nice thing about cutting the tenon and the mortise is that with a regular mortise, you have to cut all the way down your side, then you flip the board around and you cut all the way down the other side, and then you can flatten it out and go back and forth. Whereas with this, all we have to do is cut all the way down on one side and we're done. So it's a fairly quick process. This is going to be the tenon, so I need to make sure I'm staying on the outside of the line. I'm going to start with a nick. Now the other problem I have here is because I want to save this corner, I don't want to start nicking in on the far side here and cutting down the far side at all. So I'm actually going to reverse my process and start with the heel down, which feels very weird for me, but it's good practice. And once I have a small nick right there that the saw blade can rest in, then I can take the saw blade across the work, and I'm getting a little away from the line, so I'm going to readjust it. If you find yourself getting away from the line, don't try and straighten it out. Back up, use the side of the teeth to scratch your way back towards the line and correct your line rather than trying to fix it in the cut. There, now I'm back on line. I'm spending a lot of time being very careful right at the beginning because that starting kerf will become very important. So I'm going to cut down to my stop line here. And then my other stop line is this corner here. So I'm just going to go back and forth until I get right to there. Now I've cut all the way across from corner to corner at a 45-degree angle. I'm going to do the same thing back on this side. Let me zoom in a little bit and show you a little bit more about what I'm talking about. Now that I'm on the other side of the cut line. Focus. There we go. Actually, see if I can get a little closer here. There's the board. Focus. There we go. Now you should be able to see the line. I think I'm close enough for that.
Yeah, we can.
So I'm just going to nick it right here on my side of the line. And one of my tendencies is I start to fear that line, and so my saw starts to turn away from that line, and especially right off the bat. So I'm just going to eyeball that line and occasionally clear it. And I'm going to focus now on coming down the line, and then once I come down a little ways, then I'm going to focus on the top, going across the line, blowing it occasionally so I can actually see the line, and then going down the line again. And this time I'm going to focus on it going all the way down to that stop cut. And so I'm at a high angle here. Now I'm just going to work on going to both lines at the same time. A little more, right there. So now I've come all the way down and all the way across, and we're ready to cut in the shoulders on this piece. So let me zoom out, refocus. It would be fun to have a cameraman in here for this, so I wouldn't have to be refocusing all the time. But while I have this all in place, I'm going to go ahead and bring this one in here. And on this one, this is going to be the mortise, so I want to cut on the inside of the line. back up a little bit. Let me show you a little bit about my saw form and give you a couple quick tips on that. That's something a lot of people are asking about. When you're sawing, you want your elbow, your wrist, and the saw plate to all be perfectly in line. Because if your elbow is sticking out, then that's going to make your saw kink over this way, and it's kind of like trying to back a truck. If there's any twist in it, it's going to start twisting back and forth. Whereas if you keep it all in line, then it's all going to be moving nice and slowly. The problem with that is your body needs to be out of the way. If your body is in the way, pushing your elbow out as it comes back in towards you, then you're going to be twisting the saw out. So that is probably one of the biggest problems that most beginners have with a saw. A little over the line. Not a problem. And then follow down on my side of the line. There we go. Right to there. Right to there. Do the same thing on the other side. There, that's looking pretty. One of the things I love about live shows is I get one shot to do it right. And chances are, I'm not going to do it right.
No, everywhere you do it is the right way.
Ooh, yes, because I'm always right. Unfortunately, I married my wife, and her middle initial is A, which stands for always. Mm-hmm. So I may say I'm right by blood, but she's always right. Which I think is kind of the what most wives believe.
Yes, go on.
I love you, babe. Make sure I'm figuring this out right because I don't want to make 2 tenons or 2 mortices. Good, we're looking good there. Okay, so we have 2 cuts, well 3 cuts we need to still make. Number 1, we need to cut the shoulders on this morticed tenon. And on this one, we need to remove the waste in between the 2 saw cuts we had just to make the mortice. So it really doesn't matter which one you're going to do first because they're 2 very different processes. There we go. So I'm going to do the mortising removal here, and I'm going to use my holdfast, which I think this hole is working because I a while ago oiled my bench again, and all the oil went down at the holes and caused some problems in videos past. Grab my mallet. Hey, it holds. I love a good holdfast. It just makes everything nice. I'm going to stay away from my line and tap in. I'm going to put a camera on this so you can see, because we are as far away from it. There we go. Back to 2. Okay. Now, because we're cutting a mortise, there's a couple different ways to do this. Number 1, I could cut it like a mortise and keep chopping back like this. And every time I cut back, I'm going to cut in deeper and deeper until I cut through. Or I can come in here from the end and I can split it out. Ooh, the grain's running in a good direction for this one. Grain's running in a really good direction. And I can very quickly remove material this way because I'm letting the grain do the work for me. So I'll just chop down a little ways, then come in from the end and pop it out. Then repeat the process. Chop down, come in from the end, pop it out. And I'm going to do that down about halfway. Number 1, it's fun. Number 2, it's simple. And I'm going to put this right into the marking gauge line, and I'm going to cut down vertically. I'm going to undercut it just a little bit, not much. Cut down about halfway. Then I'm going to eyeball and clean out any junk in there because I want it to be good now so I don't have to flip this around in the future. Loosen up the holdfast. Clean off the bench. Before flipping over any chopped work, clean off the bench because you don't want any of the chips and curls to be underneath there. So you drive it down there, you dent up your work underneath. Put this back on there. Hold it down. Repeat the process again. Stay away from your marking gauge line. Pop out. Here you can see it, how it works a little bit easier until it breaks out and hit it a little too hard. And now I'm going to go a little, actually in this case I'm going to go right into my marking gauge line because I'm really close to it. I'm just going to clean it down and clean it down. And then clean out anything inside here. Just make it visually clean on the inside. And then this should be done. In theory, this mortise is all ready to go and functional. Next thing I need to do in this is I need to cut the shoulders. So we need to cut down at 45 degrees here and cut down at 45 degrees here. Oh, forgot to do that. Because I made my mark on this side of the board. On this one, I actually need to make the mark on both sides of the board. So just like before, I'm going to use it like a straight edge. I'm going to put my knife into this mark here. Put it up against there, put the other side right onto that corner. Right there. Draw my line. And now I have my line to cut through on this. Now this should be exactly the same as previous cuts. I can use my shooting board, my bench hook. There's the word. Back this up so you can see this a little bit better. Sorry. Then I can set this on here and I can cut it down. I could also, let me do this one freehand and show you what I'm talking about here. Because if you don't have a shooting board or you find you have problems with it, sometimes I actually just like to cut things freehand. It is very freeing and enjoyable just to not have anything guiding your saw, not have anything guiding your chisel. I want to stay away from the line because I'm going to come back and clean these up a little bit. Start on the far side, work my way back along the line until I get a nice curve there, and then cut it out. Just like that. Then we can flip it over and do the other side. Just as before, start on the far side of the line. Let my thumbnail is here guiding the saw, so I'm allowing it to push it in and out. What was that noise?
I think it's the kids on the video.
I don't know if you guys can hear it, but our kids are watching movies in the other room. Start on the far side, work my way back along that line. Making sure I'm not going too deep. There we go. Now, I tried to stay away from that line a little bit so I can come back in and clean this up. So I'm going to grab on this side, I'm just going to do it with a chisel here. And I'm just going to undercut it ever so slightly. And starting in the marking gauge line, zoom that in a little bit. Or a lot of it. There we go. And I start it in the marking gauge line here and undercut it just a hair. Not much. I know there's a lot of people out there who don't like undercutting, but I have no problem with it. Don't always need to. But undercutting is a good way to ensure a nice tight joint, or at least a very pretty joint. And then I can come back in this way and clean that out. Now the other way I can do it is I can use a shoulder plane and plane everything back to that line. which actually, let me see if I can grab mine. I haven't set it up yet, but I just bought it at the Midwest Tool Collectors meet this last month. There's a nice clean line there. We're going to do the same thing on this side, except for in this case I want to use a shoulder plane. And this allows you to get right up and close to the edge. And I need to sharpen it. I haven't sharpened that one up. So basically with the shoulder plane, once you get it sharpened and set up, you can put it on here and you can reference this surface of the plane to this surface of the tenon, slide along there, and it will clean it out and give you a really nice clean 90-degree edge from this surface to the shoulder surface. But in this case, because I just have the one to do, it's just going to be as fast for me to come in. And in this one, I do have a good bit of material to clean up, as I was a good ways away from the line on this one. And theoretically, after I cut this shoulder, this joint will be done, fit absolutely perfectly. There will be no gaps, and life will be fantastic. And my wife will say I'm amazing.
Oh, I already think you're.
And the world will clap, and I'll wake up from my dream.
I wish I could do your brother's one-handed clap.
Yes. So this one I actually have enough to take off. I'm going to do it in 2 passes. Yes, my brother does this crazy one-handed clap where he claps his fingers against his palm. It sounds actually like a really good clap, but it looks ridiculous. Don't tell him I said that.
He's probably not watching any.
Although a lot of things my wife...
We love you, Jason.
Yeah. A lot of things my brother does is ridiculous, so... He was always the one to stand out in front of the curtain, and I was always the one doing the behind-the-stage works. Of course, now I have a YouTube channel, so I'm the one in front of the curtain, but he's always better at that work than I am. There we
Wizard
go.
of Oz?
Yes. No attention to the man behind the curtain. There we go. That's nice and cleaned up. So, if I'm living in a dream fairy tale land, these 2 joints should fit together perfectly without any gaps. But the tenon is fat or the mortise is thin, so we need to clean that up a little bit. Now in the past I've shown you how I clean up the tenons. In this case, I think I'm going to leave this tenon alone and show you what I'm going to do to clean up the mortise. Because sometimes you do have a problem with the mortise. Now for a mortise, I'm usually going to grab like a 3/4 inch or a 1 inch chisel, and I like to cut across the grain and pare out like this. And I can see, yes, I did stay away from the line, so I have to clean everything back to the line. Now I'm only going to cut halfway across this joint because I don't want to blow out the other side and push all that junk and blow out the joint over there. Even though that will be, well, no, that'll be on the outside. So just going to clean out any schmoo that I see, undercut it just a hair, not much, because I don't really want to cut out the large flat surface. That's the gluable surface. Let's see how this fits. It really doesn't fit, so let's actually make it a little bit wider. Try and take off a little bit of material from both sides, unless I see that obviously one side needs it over the other. And usually the cleanup work with the chisel is where the problems happen. So be careful, be slow, don't take off anything more than you have to. Let's see how that is. Yeah, see, that's what I'm looking for there. We'll be up here. Up there. Just finish this up to the corner. And then once I get a good clean fit on this side, then I'm going to flip it around. Do the same thing on the other side. Trying not to blow out. But the grain here is not obeying me. It's wanting to tear out on me. grain is wanting to run the other direction. So I'm going to flip this over. Do the exact same thing, but from the other side. Check my fit over here. Yep. Take it off over here. And you can see here why I usually prefer to take it off of the tenon than the mortice, unless the mortice needs it. Because in my opinion, the mortice takes a little bit longer to finesse. And there's more chance of error on the mortice than there is on the tenon, in my opinion. Plus, if you ever have a good shoulder plane, that can clean up a tenon really quickly. Clean out all that junk in there. Test the fit. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Now let's see what we got here. Hey! Oh, ho, ho, ho! Oh, ho, 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 ho! It is Merry Christmas. Wow. Okay. That one I am happy with. There's a slight problem on here. Not a huge one. But let me show you any little defect on this. On this side, this is just perfectly smooth, nice tight joint right there. I'm very happy with that. You can see a tiny bit of gapping here. Grab my knife. And here, where when I came into the chisel, I undercut it a bit too much right by the edge here, rather than leaving the edge hot. And then on the back side here, it's tight all the way along here, but on this side where I came in and undercut it, you can see how I undercut a little bit past the line. And I realized I did that afterwards when I was cutting it, but oh well, that's on the back of the joint. But everything else about this, really nice and tight. And one of the nice things about a mitered double mitered bridal joint is that you have this really nice looking mitre joint, but you have the strength of a bridle. And then, and some people really like this feature of having being able to see the tenon on the back here. You can remove that by leaving some material here and then cutting this tenon right along this way, and basically just creating a smaller tenon that houses inside there. Excuse me, along this way, across the grain. And having a smaller tenon in there so you can have a blind mitered bridal joint. But I actually like the look of seeing the tenon, but I always like seeing the joinery. So I am really, really happy with how that joint came out. That is pleasing. So let's see. Is it really 8:22? Oh, I started a little early, so I guess we're doing actually really good on time.
Early? You mean late?
Yeah, late. Well, yeah, there's the other word. So yeah, there we go. That is the next joint. So we have 2 more joints to do. Probably next week we are going to be doing the pocket hole. I know, a pocket hole with hand tools. And then the last joint is going to be a splined mitre joint. So basically cutting miters and then putting a spline into it. How do you do that with hand tools? The reason I'm keeping that as last, it's easier to do that when all the pieces are together. So I'll be able to show you how that all comes. And by the end of that one, we'll have this whole window with several different joints on here. So, are there any questions?
There have been several.
Woohoo!
Now I gotta find them all.
Yes.
Hang on. Let's go back.
Who all do we have on here? Tyler Woods, woohoo! The Duck, my man.
Yeah, Tyler was saying you needed to get see if Heidi from Tool Time would do the camera, but I said Al with his flannel would be a better choice.
Now, actually, next month we might rig it up sometime when Luke is here and actually have him do it. We'll see.
All right, let's.
It'd be kind of fun.
So Hand Tool Rescue says, when is James coming over to my place?
Oh man, I want to come out there. I was trying to make it on this last trip, but yeah. Actually, this would be a good time to tell you guys. I'm going out to the Best in the West, which is a meeting in Portland, Oregon. And it happens once every 2 years, and it is a big hand tool sale. It's kind of like the national events for the Midwest tool collectors, but on the West Coast. So if you are on the West Coast and looking for tools, search the Pacific Northwest Tool Collectors Association, or Tool Association. Pacific Northwest tool, it'll come up in the search engine, and the meeting is called the Best in the West. So it is 3 days of tools for sale and schmoozing and learning about tools. They have a parking lot sale with cheap prices, and then they have a big indoor sale. So I'm looking forward to being that. I'm actually going to be able to fly out for that. Then I'm also going to be going out to the Tally Ho project by Samson Boat. He's up in Seattle. So I'll be hanging out with him for a couple days and possibly shooting a video on that. I was wanting to make the trip and going up into Canada on the way there or the way back to hang out with the hand tool rescue, but it's not going to work on this one because I'll be flying rather than driving. But yeah, I got to get together with you sometime. It'd be a lot of fun. We need to do a collab.
Alright, so Duck wanted to know, did you have this figured out from the beginning or just fly by your apron idea, meaning the whole window, I think is what we got to clarify too.
There are several different designs about doing the joinery window. There was one time where this is a common project for someone to do when they went from being an apprentice to being a journeyman, and learning how to do all the joints, since this was one of the projects that they might do to show their skill. It's just generally a decent project for that. But there's a bunch of different methods and a bunch of different designs for it. And rather than going with any particular traditional method or traditional design of you use these joints in this method, I just put them all together in my own, the joints that I most commonly used, and wanted to put them all together in one setting. So that's where I kind of came up with the set that I have. But there is no right or wrong list of put these joints in it. So if you see others, you will see other lists of joints. But no, I had this all planned out ahead of time, what joints I wanted to do, although I've been working through what order do I want to do them because of video and what I have on hand. I was going to be doing the pocket hole tonight, but because I came back late, I didn't have one piece that I need, so I'll be doing that one later, but yeah.
All right, LimitedGunnerGM says, James, have you considered making a joinery bench like Shannon from Renaissance Woodworking has?
Yes, I would like to do that. I don't have the space in my current shop. His shop is about 3 foot wider than mine is, and mine's a little bit longer because I have the wood storage in my office here in the shop with me. But yes, eventually I would like to have a shop with a joinery bench. I'm keeping, if I didn't keep my original first bench in the shop, then I probably would have a joinery bench over there in a proper finishing area, sharpening area. But because I'm keeping the bench, it takes up a lot of space, and I want to do a lot of other tool restorations, so that's why I have that bench in here rather than other joinery benches. But yeah, someday.
All right.
It is nice, just to let you guys know, the joinery bench is something a little higher. And what I would like to build is actually a carving bench. So it's a joinery bench that's higher, but then it's also pivotable, so you can actually mount things to it and carve and at different angles.
Alrighty. Chris Built Stuff says, so satisfying to watch these joints being made. What's your favorite joint to do?
Oh, I don't know if I have a favorite joint. I guess whatever joint comes together and it's just really, really happy. Like this one, this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this joint tonight because it came out really nice. I don't know if I have a joint. I like a joint that challenges me. I like something with difficulty and something that is not easy. Anything that's kind of wild. I think once I finish this, I'm going to do like the sunrise dovetail joint. Which is basically a dovetail joint, but rather than having just a dovetail, it has a series of fans that are all at different angles. And so the boards, rather than coming together at 90 degrees, come together at an angle and spline together. And so it's kind of a fun, challenging joint. We'll see if I'll do that one. I don't know. But yeah, the more the challenging, the better. I guess that's my favorite.
All right. And then a couple questions related to the actual project. So Bland had, could you chisel to remove material, I'm guessing in line you are doing without pre-cutting it. Does that make sense? Can you use the tool to remove material like you are doing without pre-cutting it? I think is what
I think you're talking about like on the tenon, rather than cutting down the cheek, rather than cutting down the cheeks of it, you can use a chisel to pop out those cheeks. And that works really well as long as the grain is straight. And in this case, my grain on these actually run out at an angle. And so on one side, if the grain is running at an angle, if I try to chisel it out, it's going to run out this way, and I'm still going to have to come in with a saw and clean it out. And if I try to chisel out on this way, then it's going to run in past my line and get rid of my tenon. And so if you have really nice, straight, clean grain, then doing that is fine. But in this case, I don't have clean grain, so it's really not an option. I hope that was your answer. Question, if not.
Let's see. DBaca Maker said, at what point do you decide to stop finessing the mortise and just refine the tenon? Which you kind of talked about.
Yeah, most of the time I'm just going to work on the tenon and I don't mess with the mortise. As long as I look in the mortise and I realize, yeah, it's clean, the lines are straight, I'm good with it, then I'm just going to work on the tenon to fit into there. In this case, I wanted to show you how I work on the mortise, because most of the time I just work on the tenon. I find it easier and quicker to work on a tenon where I can see it easier than working on a mortise where it's inside there. The tenon is just a little easier for me. But I do like showing both, because sometimes you look at the mortise and you're like, oh yeah, I got to clean that out. It becomes fairly obvious that you need to work on the mortise and not the tenon. So hope that answers your question.
All right, let's see. The duck also says, looking at how he's making a joint that is 45 degrees, will James be willing to show us how to make a dovetail joint at angles not at 90 degrees?
Yes, actually I have a project that I have been working on for almost 2 years. It's sitting over there. And well, basically what it is, if you imagine, a dovetail box that has 4 sides. So I want to make it with 5 sides so that the angles are splayed out that way. But also, rather than having the sides at parallel with each other, all 5 sides are then leaning out. So it basically is creating a 5-sided bowl. And so I really have this project running in the back of my head, and I have a few pieces over there that I started on a while ago, and I think I still have the video footage from it. I just haven't gotten around to doing it again. And that is a serious mind game, because not only are the dovetails not at 90 degrees this way, but then they're not at 90 degrees this way, and so everything becomes really, it's a total mind job and a lot of fun. Once the geometry of it clicks in your brain, it becomes really simple. It's just like any other joint. You're just drawing a line and cutting to it. But it's figuring out where to put those lines and how do you actually lay it out that becomes very confusing. So yeah, I do want to do that.
All right, let's see. I thought there was one more.
Yeah, if you want to see it, Shannon Rogers actually has a few videos on that.
Let's see. Wright Channel Joshua Wright had one. I have a challenge for you, James. It would be to make a wooden straight razor that can actually fold like a real one.
A wooden straight razor that would fold like a real one. Are you saying with a wooden blade? But unless you're making like a straight razor for shaving, that'd be kind of fun. Yeah, it'd be a good collab project. There's some channel out there who wants to make the blade and I make the handle. That'd be a fun one.
All right, so let's see.
Yeah. Also, we have 2 joints coming up left on this. So if there's any particular thing you would like to see on these live videos, let me know. I'm thinking about possibly making a stool over the series of a couple of videos, and that might be kind of interesting. We'll see. But yeah, if you have some project, let me know.
All right, so let's see. Tim Cheatwood said, would the double mitered bridal joint be a better choice for a long entryway mirror or the splined miter joint?
Depends on what you want. The spline and the bridal joint are both going to give you about the same strength. Some people are going to really argue that the double mitered bridal joint is stronger because there is no third piece that can come loose. But the gluing surface between them is fairly similar, so either one's going to be relatively similar in strength. So whatever. Splined joints are very easy to do with power tools because you can glue it up, you put it in your table saw, you run it through, you throw a spline in there, and you're done. Whereas this joint is very difficult to make with power tools because you have to set up a bunch of jigs, you have to get everything ready, and then all the detailing to get this all to fit together is kind of annoying. But with hand tools, I find the bridal joint to be a little easier than working with a spline. So I guess it just depends on what you want to try. But strength-wise, they're pretty equal. So,
And then a couple of people have mentioned your run. I don't know if you've mentioned that on
mentioned what?
your channel, your long run this weekend.
Oh, yes. Saturday into Sunday morning slightly. I went out and did a 100-kilometer run, which the actual distance of this race was about 68 miles. And it was a grueling race because it was up and down and up and down and up and down. And if you think about a hilly race, this wasn't a hilly race. This was basically a mountainous race. It was just over 14,000 feet of elevation climb, up and down and up and down and up and down over 68 miles. There were, I think it was like 600 and some stairs per loop, three loops. There were 37 bridges, which came out to a total of 164 bridges to be crossed over the run. It was a massive race and a lot of fun. I'm still really sore, and I've just now gotten to the stage where I can actually walk without most of a limp. But yeah, I started 7 a.m. on Saturday and ended up at 12:30 a.m. Sunday morning. So it was 17 and a half hours of running. But I guess that comes with the same hand tool, because the couple days leading up to the race, I was planing lumber and sawing lumber all by hand. So yeah, I'm crazy.
I think they know that. I think that's about it for
Cool.
questions.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. If you do have any questions that I wasn't able to get to, feel free to email me, send those message. Also, if you have some plan, something you'd like me to build, let me know. If you are going to be able to make it to the Best in the West, please let me know. I'm thinking about doing a hangout meetup when I'm out there, and I'd like to find a good place because I don't know the area. So if you're going to be able to be out there, I would love to say hey and meet up. And the meeting will be coming in September. I'm trying to make it so Sarah can come out with me. We'll see about that, so that you guys can actually meet her. And then you won't care about me anymore. So, so I think that's about it for today. Until next time, have a wonderful day.